Will Smith, Johnny Depp, and most recently, Travis Hunter. What do all these men have in common? Yes, they're all very wealthy. They've all won the game of capitalism, and they've all achieved some degree of social status in the world. They're all famous, but they've also all gone through the exact same experience, which is public disrespect and ridicule at the hands of the women that they've chosen at some point in time. Now, why is this the case? How is it possible that all these men that are in amazing positions in life are all getting treated like not the priority in their relationships, like second class citizens in their own households? It's very simple. It's because they're all making the exact same mistakes. Attraction killers. That is exactly what's going on. They're all doing the exact same things that seem harmless on the surface, that are leading them down the path of unrighteousness when it comes to this game. Now, I really want to focus in on that because this is very important. These attraction killers, as I've called them, as I've coined them, are very inconspicuous in nature. That is to say, they're hard to detect and they're very subtle. You don't even notice that you're doing them. These are mistakes that are unconscious to the human mind. But if left unchecked and if done repeatedly over a long period of time, it can lead you to becoming a literal psychological slave to your woman. It can lead you down to the point where you feel like you are lonely, even though you're in a relationship with a person. It can get to the point where you might even feel, in some extreme cases, God forbid, the urge to take yourself out. Now, we don't want that, do we? And a lot of men are suffering from this on a daily basis. So, my job here today is very simple. It is I, Jason Favorite Scientist. I'm going to be teaching you what these attraction killers are, how to stop making these mistakes, and if you've already made these mistakes, how to reverse course, right? I'm not going to teach you what these mistakes are, how they physically manifest in your relationships, but also how to recover from them, assuming you've already made them. Does that sound good enough? All right, let's begin. Attraction killers. Now, before we really get into them proper, you might be asking yourself, I'm sure there's a few minds out there curious about this question. If you get to the point in your relationship, right, where you're so disrespected by your woman that she feels the need or just begins to unconsciously disrespect you in public in front of other people, what's the point in continuing that relationship? Why do you even want to keep going on? Why bother with that? Well, I have two major reasons for that. And these might sound shaky at first, but I promise you they both make perfect sense. The first one, I feel like I have to write these down, is the fact that you might repeat, that's number one, repeat the same mistakes with the next relationship. See, no one ever thinks about this, but yes, it's good to have the willingness to walk away, the ability to walk away. It's very true what everyone all over the internet keeps repeating, that it is one of the most important kind of powers and leverage that you need to have in your relationship. With that said, though, if you do walk away from a situation like that, where a woman is so comfortable she feels okay with disrespecting you repeatedly, then you got to understand that it's not her fault she's doing that. It's yours. It is always the man's fault because women by nature are reactionary. We'll touch on that a little more later in this video. But the point is, it's not coming from her. The real problem is your own behavior towards her. And so, if you were to leave that situation and just go find the next girl and replace her, sure, you could do that. But more than likely, over 90% of the time, you just end up repeating the same situation with the next girl, right? The second one is even more realistic and more important, which is the fact that the kind of man that would find himself in a situation where he is indeed trapped in that psychological prison already. He's in the situation where his woman is treating him like complete dog shit. That man, more than likely, doesn't have the willingness or ability to walk away. You could you could preach to him the virtues of it, and try your best to explain it to him, and all those different things. But because he's gone out of his way to keep making the same mistakes, those attraction killers, over and over and over and over and over again, it's a little deeper now. His mind has been subjugated. So telling that man, assuming you're that man listening to me right now, that you should just get up and walk away, I can already tell from the way you feel right now, you know it doesn't really work that way. Not that it's not possible, but it's very difficult. Not without the proper tools and without first understanding how it is you got into this prison in the first place. Right? So these are the two major reasons I think it's important to really understand how to correct from these mistakes. That, and on top of that, a third reason, call this a bonus reason. I just believe in general that you can't really call yourself advanced at anything if you don't know how to correct your mistakes. The difference between the master and the novice is the ability to correct mistakes. The novice is scared to make mistakes. The master is not, because he knows how to correct them. Right? So if you want to really understand how to be a master of your life and relationships, you must learn to alleviate yourself of the fear of making mistakes by learning how to correct them so they don't have any kind of psychological power over you. All right, let's talk about these mistakes, what they are, these attraction killers. First things first, I kind of lied to you in the beginning. All right, I called them mistakes, plural, but really, there's only one mistake that men make in a relationship that is manifested in multiple ways. So these attraction killers all emanate from the exact same source, the one thing that men are doing wrong. But they're manifested physically in different ways, which is why they're called attraction killers, right? But it's really one mistake. And what's that mistake? Prioritizing the woman. That's it. The major mistake these men all keep making, the Travis Hunters and Will Smiths of the world, is that they at some point begin to prioritize the woman over themselves. And that is a destruction, right? A breaking of one of the most fundamental laws of the game. The law of, oh my, no, almost forgot how to spell there. The law of psychological positioning is a fundamental law of the game that women only choose men that they believe are better than them. That is not a matter of opinion. Those are hard, cold facts backed up by thousands of years of research and science. Okay? Women want to procreate with and align themselves with socially, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, etc., with men that they perceive are better than them, right? Women have never chosen, and this is my personal, beef with Dr. Jordan Peterson. He'll always say, women only ever choose men across and up dominance hierarchies. I disagree. Women have never chosen across, only ever up, only. Even the situations where you believe a woman is choosing her equal, I promise you, if you look deeper and closer into that relationship, there's something about that guy that makes her genuinely believe that he is better than her, right? So it's a fundamental destruction of this law that's causing all these problems, making her believe that you believe she's better than you. So there's two major ways this particular issue, this mistake, these attraction killers manifest themselves. There's two very major ways. The first way is your behavioral cues. That is to say, your words and actions around her. Anything you do and anything you say around the woman is a reflection of the value that you believe you perceive around her and her value towards you. Everything you do and say communicates to her where you think you are psychologically in relation to her, and she's paying close attention, right? Because it is in her best interest from an evo psych point of view, that is evolutionary psychology point of view, to again choose the best man she can find within her reach. It is within her evolutionary interest to be her programmist like that, to pick the best bang for her buck, literally, right? So she's always looking at your behavior to figure out what hers is going to be. Like I said initially, women are reactionary creatures. There's a mirror principle there. They're always going off of your behavioral cues, right? Okay. So anything you say, anything you do around her, if you say and do things that make her believe that she's better than you, she's going to believe it. Even if you don't necessarily believe them. This is where it gets very tricky, right? Because not only is there the law of the mirror principle going on there, that female nature of how reactionary women are, there's also the law of expectations. Whatever it is that you say is true will become true, whether you choose to intend it or not. If you want to familiarize yourself more with all these laws I'm talking about, maybe you're a little lost, that's fine. I have an entire video I'm going to link somewhere here. Called The Laws of the Game, to really help you acquaint yourself with all these laws so that you understand them on a deeper level. Each one is covered very thoroughly. But back to this. Law of expectation. If you perceive her as better than you, then she'll pick it up and she'll begin to believe it. This is why things like self-deprecation are very dangerous. They can be amazing tools if mixed in with humor and correct timing, right? Especially in the beginning parts of getting to know a woman. It shows confidence and an ability to not take yourself seriously, all that good stuff. But if used incorrectly, you can begin to make a woman believe that you don't think you match up to her. You can begin to put yourself down in front of this woman without realizing. Self-deprecation is very dangerous. Another one that's very dangerous is pedestalization. So, self-deprecation is when you put yourself down, right? Self-deprecation is when you put yourself down. Pedestalization is when you put her above you. Entirely different motions there, entirely different intentions, but they essentially bring you down to the same result, which is that the woman believes that she's in a relationship that she shouldn't be in. See, here's the thing people don't seem to understand. I'm going to explain these two in tandem with each other because, again, they're like a yin and yang, right? Self-deprecation is the last thing a woman wants to hear because, like we said before, women are always aspiring to the best bang for their buck. They want to know that there's someone that is attractive, that other women want, etc. Which is why the concept and principle of pre-selection is very powerful when it comes to attracting women, right? The last thing you want to give her, the last thing she wants to hear, is that the man she's with doesn't fucking add up. The last thing you want her to believe is that she made a wrong decision, a bad choice, choosing you. Which is why self-deprecation is particularly destructive. But then pedestalization does nothing but feed into all that, because then on top of telling her you made the wrong choice by choosing me, you're also telling her you can do way better than me. So you make her the priority there by telling her things and doing things around her that confirm to her that she can do better than you. So you got to watch out for the things you're saying, the inconspicuous language you use around girls, like telling her things like how irreplaceable she is to you, how you're going to unconditionally love her forever, and all those other things. Bringing yourself down to make her feel better, right? Oh, the you're my better half. God, you're my better half. You complete me. I can't do anything without you, or I can't live without you. Anything towards that kind of language will always put you at a massive deficit and make her begin to believe she can do better than you. Because clearly she can. Obviously, if you're saying it, right? So your behavioral cues are the first major mistakes you make when it comes to killing the attraction. You have to be very careful not to say or do anything that makes her feel like she's more important than you in the relationship. And the next thing, the next way attraction killers manifest themselves, which will tie in the behavioral cues part for you perfectly, right? Is reassurance. Oh, this is one of those mistakes that every man on planet Earth at some point has to make. It's for character development, right? Think of it like what are kids calling it these days? A canon event, as they say. Okay, canon event, canon event. Reassurance. Reassurance really comes down to who feels more certain in the relationship, who feels more confident, who feels like their position in the relationship is solid and firm. And whoever is asking for reassurance to know where they stand in the relationship more is always going to be the weaker, lesser party. It's really that simple, right? Men make the mistake of thinking, and this is how men think, right? And I'm very well aware of this because not only have I thought like this at one point in my life, but I help a lot of clients and students one on one that go through the same kind of thought process before they run into me. And the process it goes like this. Okay, I know. I'm going to try to get reassurance out of this woman. I want to feel safer in the relationship. I want to know that she's not thinking about trying to replace me. So I have a brilliant idea. I'm going to pump her full of reassurance and make her feel like her place with me is solid and 100%. And I'm guessing that after doing that, maybe she'll feel comfortable and safe enough in the relationship to then give me safety and comfort in return. That's the goofy logic we all have when we don't know what we're doing. But after watching this video, you now know better. The truth is, all you do when you give a woman massive permanence and reassurance, unconditional love, as you call it, is make her feel more certain about where she stands. And when a woman feels 100% certain about where she stands in the relationship, then she quite literally has no sense of urgency in the relationship anymore. You see, what people keep forgetting is that human beings in general are incentive based creatures. We always need to have a reason behind why we do what we do. Now, according to evolutionary psychology, that reason ultimately comes down to our biological imperatives, which is our need to survive and our need to procreate and replicate, right? So stay alive long enough and stay alive long enough to pass our genes on to the next generation. Every action and behavior we take, every decision we make ultimately boils down to that, which is fair. But people keep forgetting that, right? People keep forgetting that there always has to be an incentive for people to do, especially the right thing, because the right thing is hard to do. Why do you think behind every law in society there's some kind of a way to enforce it? Usually through the subtle threat of violence. Why do you think that's the case? Every single law in society today, especially if you live in a developed country, right, like the one I'm in, shout out to America, every single country has laws, and those laws are backed up by some means to enforce them. Why? Why can't we just have the laws and just have everyone just obey them the way they are? Because if there was no consequences for breaking the laws, then people would just break them all the time. We need an incentive to act right, and especially women. Women are very incentive based. Women do not usually have the discipline to keep doing the right things, the hard things to keep a relationship alive, unless they are incentivized to do it. There always has to be a consequence for their bad behavior. When you give them reassurance and make them feel 100% sure of where they stand in the relationship, you're essentially taking away any incentive or sense of urgency they may have to keep doing the very difficult, very right things to keep the relationship going. It's hard to keep a relationship going for both men and women, by the way. She has to do certain things. She has to keep being a certain way, be subservient to you, be a certain level of energy around you, make you feel a certain type of good, the way you like to feel good. She has to balance all these different things. and make sure she's the perfect woman for you. Maybe not 100% of the time because that's impossible, but at least over 90% of the time, right? In an ideal situation, right? So that's what needs to happen. That cannot happen with any woman if she genuinely doesn't have a reason to do that. They have to be incentivized. So your reassurance and giving her 100% of reassurance into the future kills any chance of urgency she would otherwise have to do any of those amazing things for you and be as subservient as she should be in a relationship with you. But again, remember what I said before in the beginning. The reason you're asking for all of this reassurance to begin with is because the reason you're giving, all this reassurance to begin with is because you're asking for it. You think you're trying to get reassurance on the sly by asking her like if she wants to be reassured and then giving her reassurance and then hoping that the law of reciprocity kicks in and you get reassurance in return. It's pathetic. It's weak. It's psychologically weak and also just plain pathetic. Like, how else do you want me to put it? It's not something that a man who is sure of himself would do. Right. And now we're going to get into my favorite part of this, how to actually recover. Because that last thing I just said is a perfect segue into this. The reason you require all of this, the reason you're in this psychological prison that she's kept you in, assuming you're there, right? This is for those of you that aren't in a relationship yet and you plan to be in one, pay attention. The reason any man finds himself in this psychological prison, forgive me, my prison is not the best, but you guys get the point. Locked up. um, the reason you're in the psychological prison is a very simple one. Is because you have made her the priority, and you have made her the priority precisely because you do not feel complete within yourself. You have allowed yourself to become completely. This is me drawing chains. There we go. I might as well bring it all the way here. You have made yourself completely. This is her, by the way. She's in the skirt. Codependent on her. You have allowed. Wow, that's a long ass chain. You have allowed yourself to become mentally and psychologically and emotionally completely codependent on her. You have allowed her to become the reason you feel good. And as a result, the reason you feel bad about yourself. You see the point? So that's why you're there. Let's not talk about how to correct this. Because this is a very interesting situation. This usually cannot happen overnight, but it needs to be done correctly. Now, I said before in the beginning, walking away, the need to walk away. Sorry about the mic bump. The need to walk away, the ability to walk away is very important. I'm not lying about that. In fact, that's involved in this process here. But it needs to be done correctly. And it needs to be done, obviously, with your dignity intact, but also in a manner that you can replicate this success over and over again. You can make this correction whenever you want without, completely always having to burn a bridge. So here's how it works. First step to correcting this mistake and not giving all this value for no reason and all this unconditional love and just displaying all these attraction killers, just killing this attraction. First things first, you must stop displaying attraction killers. Easy enough, right? Like, duh. Of course, that's the first step. You have to stop doing the wrong thing so you can have the room to do the right thing. So now you know what the attraction killers are. You're going to stop self-deprecating so much. You're going to stop pedestalizing her. When I say pedestalizing her, I'm not just talking about the way you speak to her. I'm also talking about the things you do around her. Very important. You must stop allowing her to be front and center in every decision you make. You must stop making her and her feelings and her emotions the priority in your fucking life. As a first step. And also, obviously, stop giving her so much reassurance. Start introducing things into your language that let her know that your relationship might not last forever and you'd be okay with it regardless. Very important. So instead of saying stuff like "I'll love you forever," even if we broke up, I would never be with anyone else, or if we got divorced, I would never get married, or if you died, I would never remarry, or any dumb shit like that. Instead of saying all that, say instead stuff like, you know what, if we broke up right now, we've had a long run, haven't we? We've had a good relationship. You know what? I'll miss you when I see you with your next boyfriend. Tell him I said hi. Say stuff like that. Begin to say things that let her know that a future with you is not guaranteed. Okay, that's the first step. Second step, you must begin to challenge her. Challenge. Don't try to challenge. That's a Rod Van Dam reference. Shout out to Rod Van Dam, one of the best action actors from when I was a kid, right? Shout out to Rod Van Dam, Jet Li, Jackie Chan, all those guys. But you must begin to challenge her. A big reason women get very comfortable in relationships and allow the attraction to die is because they don't see you as a challenge anymore. And they don't see you as a challenge anymore because you don't challenge her anymore. You are not making her meet up the standards that you have for her that are much higher than where her comfort zone is. When was the last time you asked your woman to do something very difficult for you? When was the last time you asked her to go out of her way to make a massive sacrifice on your behalf? You have to begin to start doing that again. You have to begin as soon as possible. Now, there is one thing I'll tell you before I tell you this third thing, because there's a third and final step. And you need to know this before I give you this third and final step. Along the way where you're doing all this, please, 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 please do not expect it all to be very smooth and seamless. This is one thing all my students and clients always get confused by or surprised by whenever I tell them, but it needs to be said, and it needs to be said early. When you are changing your behavior in front of your woman, the goal ultimately is to get her to change her behavior, but you must change your behavior, which starts with changing your psychology, right? Changing your mindset, which is what this entire video is about. With that said, though, don't expect it to happen overnight and don't expect her to just come along all of a sudden. Don't forget where you're coming from. Don't forget the deficit you've been in this entire time. You're dealing with a woman that's been so comfortable in a relationship with you this entire time, that she feels like she can get away with anything with you. She feels like she can pretty much do anything she wants when it comes to you and get away with it. That woman isn't going to relinquish the power she has over you overnight. It's not going to happen. She's going to fight tooth and nail to keep the power she has over you. Of course she's going to. She's going to pull out every tactic in the book. She's going to make sure, to the best of her abilities, that you don't get the power back at all. So she's going to fight, and there will be massive tests along the way, which brings me to the third and final thing. Along the way, as you're going through all these tests, you're going to eventually hit the mother of all tests, the major final test that we call the ultimatum. Once you've hit this, there's two things I want you to think. One, this is going to be the biggest test you receive from her throughout this entire process. She's going to fight you the most with this ultimatum. But two, and this is the second thing I want you to keep in mind, if she's giving you an ultimatum, right? And what is an ultimatum? That's her asking you to make some massive sacrifice on her behalf, right? If she is giving you an ultimatum, that tells you you're at the finish line, or at least you're close to it. That right there is a Hail Mary attempt for her to keep the power in the relationship, which in itself, this ultimatum, once it shows up, it should tell you that she knows she's losing the power. And this is her last hurrah. This is her last attempt at fighting you to keep the power. If you can make it past this, you've completely flipped the script and you now have the power in the relationship. Congratulations. Unfortunately, I want to say about 86% of men fail right there. 86%. Not even kidding. Probably a little more if I'm not being conservative. But the majority of men get to this point, get scared from all the posturing and all the repetition of the consequences of not going through with her ultimatum, and then back off. They go right back to being comfortable like they were before. Right? They act like the children of Israel in the Sahara Desert. Well, we can go back to Egypt. We were slaves there, but at least we got 2 square meals a day. That's what happens usually at this point, unfortunately. But if you can survive this point, I'm telling you, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you have completely flipped the script and you now have all the power in the world to do exactly what you want to do, right? You can lead your woman correctly, make her feel safe, and the thought of trying to replace you is completely removed from her head. Completely removed from her head. But this test is a motherfucker. This test will always target the most sensitive part of you. Women know you, especially the woman you're in a relationship with, they know you better than anyone else. So if she's got you in that psychological prison as long as she did, trust me, she knows who her prisoner is. She knows what you respond to, what you want, all your temptations, all the weak spots for you, everything. She knows your psychological weaknesses and all. And she will pull out all those guns and use them here. More than likely, and the majority of the time, she's going to attack your reputation and she's going to attack your relationship itself. She's going to threaten to take away the relationship and her validation and attention as a result if you don't follow through with what she wants. That is always going to be the terrorist move, the kidnapper move. They're going to kidnap the validation and the attention and the pussy and be like, put a gun to it and be like, yeah, that's right. Either do what I'm asking you to, or you'll never see this again. Shout out to Patrice O'Neal. Yeah, but that's what happens. If you pass this though, you're set. If you actually pass the ultimatum, then you're pretty much golden. You're set. You have more power than you know what to do with in the relationship. You have complete control of the frame and the narrative in the relationship, and everything pretty much goes the way you want it to. But you have to pass that last ultimatum. Now the question becomes, and the final question in this video becomes, how exactly do you pass the ultimatum? What does it take? Well, it's going to depend on how long you were in the deficit, because that's what you have to keep in mind, right? The deficit you were in is what's going to determine how much overcorrection and overcompensation you have to do. The law of compensation. Not compensation. Law of over compensation. Damn, that's a long ass word. I think I got long arms. Law of overcompensation dictates that the steeper and deeper the deficit you're in, the more work you have to do to overcorrect, right? So if you were in the doghouse, quote unquote, the psychological prison for a year, you're going to have some time to get out of there, maybe a few months before you get to the ultimatum and eventually pass. But if you were there for several years, it might take you almost a year, maybe up to a year, maybe more than a year to finally get out. Now, the real change that needs to happen is internal. It's psychological. It's a change in your mindset, in your mind. The physical changes as they manifest and the kind of tests you'll bring to you, that's what will take time eventually. But you'll know when you've gone through all the steps and completed all the levels when you finally get that ultimatum. Now, ultimately, the best thing you can do for yourself in all of this is remember that your self-belief is paramount. Self-belief and lack of it is really the main reason that you find yourself in a situation where a woman treats you like you ain't shit. So work on your self-belief first and foremost. I have an entire course dedicated to the concept of self-belief, and it is entirely free. Go to my link in the description or the first comment and you'll see it there. Okay, so get self-belief, go through that. Again, completely free of charge. Understand the building blocks and purpose of actually having belief in yourself so that you learn how to not be in that kind of deficit ever again. Your mindset is the most important thing in game, as I'll always say. All right, it's been Jason Forever Scientist. With all this information, what you must.